Most people spend their entire lives trying to look powerful. They chase status, attention, approval, the perfect image. They believe power comes from being admired, desired, impossible to ignore. But the strange thing is, the people who seem the most desperate to appear powerful are often the weakest people in the room. Because real power has never been about visibility. It is about emotional stability in a world designed to manipulate your emotions. And if you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, quietly dismissed by louder people around you, then you may already be closer to real power than you think. Because the trait that changes everything is not dominance, not charisma, not money. It is the ability to remain internally grounded when the world tries to pull you out of yourself. Most people cannot do this. A single rejection changes their mood. A little disrespect ruins their peace. Being ignored in a conversation suddenly makes them question their worth. They are controlled externally. And whoever controls your emotional state, controls you. That is the hidden truth society rarely talks about. Modern culture teaches people to build identity through reaction. More likes. More validation. More recognition. More proof that they matter. But the more dependent you become on external confirmation, the more fragile your sense of self becomes. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Most people think they are making choices freely. But psychologically, they are reacting constantly. Reacting to praise. Reacting to rejection. Reacting to comparison. Reacting to invisible fears they have never confronted. And this creates a strange paradox. The more someone needs to be seen as important, the less powerful they actually feel inside. Because true power does not beg for recognition. It does not announce itself loudly. It does not chase every room for acceptance. It does not collapse when ignored. It simply remains centered. There is a certain kind of person you have probably met before. They walk into a room quietly. They do not perform. They do not try too hard. Yet people feel their presence immediately. Not because they are the highest status person there, but because they are psychologically settled within themselves. There is no desperation leaking out of them. And human beings can feel desperation instantly. People sense when someone is trying too hard to impress. Trying too hard to belong. Trying too hard to be chosen. But calm self-possession has gravity. Nietzsche wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." A person connected to themselves deeply no longer bends psychologically for every external opinion. And that changes the energy they carry. Because power is not intensity. Power is non-neediness. The modern world misunderstands confidence completely. It teaches confidence as performance. As loudness. As constant certainty. As domination over others. But real confidence is much quieter than that. Real confidence is emotional independence. It is the ability to sit alone without feeling incomplete. To be misunderstood without collapsing internally. To walk away from what diminishes you, even when loneliness follows. Most people cannot tolerate psychological silence. That is why they constantly seek distraction. Noise. Attention. Validation. Endless stimulation. Because silence forces confrontation with the self. And this is where Jung's idea of individuation becomes important. Individuation is the process of becoming psychologically whole. Not perfect. Whole. It means integrating the parts of yourself you were taught to reject. Your insecurity. Your anger. Your loneliness. Your ambition. Your fear of being ordinary. Most people spend years hiding these parts to appear acceptable. But hidden emotions do not disappear. They control behavior from the shadows. The man desperate to dominate others often feels powerless internally. The person obsessed with attention often fears invisibility deeply. The constantly agreeable person is often terrified of abandonment. The shadow always reveals itself eventually. And the more unconscious you are of it, the more it controls your life. True power begins when you stop running from yourself. That is the first transformation. The first stage is radical self-observation. Not self-hatred. Not overthinking. Observation. You begin noticing your emotional reactions honestly. Why does rejection hurt so deeply? Why does being ignored create anxiety? Why do certain people intimidate you immediately? Most people never ask these questions. They distract themselves before self-awareness can deepen. But the moment you begin observing yourself honestly, your unconscious patterns start losing control over you. Awareness creates distance. And distance creates freedom. Viktor Frankl once wrote, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose. That space changes everything. Because now, instead of reacting automatically, you begin responding consciously. Someone disrespects you. You no longer explode emotionally just to protect your ego. Someone overlooks you. You no longer spiral into self-doubt. You become less emotionally available to manipulation. And this unsettles people. Because many social dynamics are built entirely on emotional control. The second transformation is learning to tolerate solitude. This is where most people fail. Not physically alone. Psychologically alone. There is a difference. Many people are surrounded constantly yet terrified internally. They need reassurance every moment because they have never built a relationship with themselves. But eventually life forces everyone into solitude. Late nights. Empty rooms. Quiet drives home after disappointment. Moments where distractions disappear and only your thoughts remain. And in those moments, you discover who you truly are. Imagine sitting alone at night while the world sleeps. No notifications. No conversations. No performance. Just silence. At first, it feels uncomfortable. Then slowly, something changes. You realize how much of your identity was built around other people's perceptions. How much energy you spent trying to avoid rejection. Trying to appear enough. Trying to become acceptable. And for the first time, you stop negotiating your worth externally. This is the beginning of inner authority. A person who can sit peacefully with themselves becomes psychologically dangerous in the best possible way. Because they are no longer easily controlled. The third transformation is emotional restraint. Not suppression. Restraint. There is immense power in someone who does not react impulsively. Anyone can yell. Anyone can prove a point emotionally. Anyone can seek revenge when wounded. But restraint reveals mastery. Jung believed that integrating the shadow meant becoming conscious of your darkness without becoming possessed by it. In other words, you become aware of your anger without worshipping it. Aware of your ego without obeying it. Aware of your pain without projecting it onto everyone else. This creates a calm intensity. And people feel it immediately. Think about the individual in a group conversation who speaks less but says meaningful things. The room listens differently when they talk. Why? Because presence is not created through volume. It is created through inner alignment. Most people speak compulsively because they fear disappearing. But someone comfortable with silence radiates certainty. There is a moment many people experience but rarely talk about. You are sitting in a room full of people, yet emotionally disconnected from everyone around you. You watch people performing versions of themselves constantly. Laughing too hard. Pretending confidence. Seeking invisible approval. And suddenly you realize. Most social behavior is fear management. Fear of exclusion. fear of insignificance, fear of not mattering. And from that realization, something inside you becomes quieter. Not colder. Clearer. You stop chasing attention because you finally understand why everyone else is chasing it. And once you see the game clearly, it loses power over you. The final transformation is accepting that your worth cannot be negotiated socially. This is the deepest realization of all. Because eventually every external identity fades. Beauty fades. Status changes. Attention disappears. People leave. Public admiration shifts constantly. So if your identity depends entirely on external validation, suffering becomes inevitable. This is why so many outwardly successful people remain internally unstable. They built an empire around an empty center. But a person who knows themselves deeply becomes harder to break. Because their identity is rooted internally. Existential psychology reminds us that every human being eventually confronts mortality. And when you truly understand that your life is temporary, many social fears begin looking absurd. Why spend your existence begging strangers to validate your existence? Why sacrifice authenticity just to remain acceptable? Why abandon yourself to gain temporary approval? At some point, maturity means understanding that not everyone will understand you. And that is fine. The need to be universally accepted is psychological imprisonment. Real freedom begins when you can disappoint people without abandoning yourself. That is power. Not dominance. Not control. Not status. Just inner stability in a chaotic world. A quiet mind. A grounded presence. An identity no longer dependent on applause. And ironically, the less desperately you seek validation, the more naturally people respect you. Because human beings trust those who are not psychologically begging for something. As Lao Tzu said, "He who conquers others is strong, he who conquers himself is mighty." Self-mastery changes your entire presence. You stop forcing conversations. Stop chasing people emotionally. Stop shrinking yourself to fit environments that exhaust your spirit. You begin choosing peace over performance. And this creates a rare kind of gravity. Not because you are trying to appear powerful, but because you finally stopped abandoning yourself for acceptance. That is the hidden trait. Emotional self-possession. The ability to remain centered without needing constant proof of your value. And once you develop it, life changes quietly. You no longer chase. You attract naturally through authenticity. You no longer force. You embody. You no longer beg the world to see your worth. Because you finally see it yourself. And in a world addicted to noise, performance, and validation, that kind of inner stillness becomes unforgettable. If this resonated with something deep inside you, subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who needs this reminder. Come back again when the world becomes too loud, and you need to remember where real power begins.